Optics are crucial. And here's why. Every day when you get out of bed, you put on a shirt. Maybe you think it looks good. Maybe it portrays what you want it to portray. Maybe it makes you feel a certain way and it motivates you because you look nice in that shirt. And you do your hair a certain way because optics matter. And the way that we present ourselves matters. So what if instead of saying optics is at odds with execution, optics is an element of execution? Kipp, good to see you, man. We had a little bit of technical difficulty there, but I think we got it for the most part. I don't know.
It's one of
technology is crazy.
Yeah, one of those technology things where you just do some stuff, none of it logically makes sense, and it maybe just kind of works.
Seems to help. Well, the thing I don't understand about technology is I could wake up, like I could leave my setup exactly the way it is and do a podcast at night, and I could come back in the morning to do a podcast, and all of a sudden it's not working. It's like, how, like nobody touched anything. I didn't touch anything and it's still not working. But anyways, regardless, here we are. We got it to work, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. How was your weekend, sir?
It was good. Soccer game for my daughter. Other than that, just kind of hanging out and taking it easy. I was actually on the couch yesterday taking a nap, and my kids come in. I can't remember who said it because it woke me out of my sleep, and said, Eli broke his leg. It's dangling. His foot is dangling. And I'm like, what? Yeah, he broke his foot playing basketball. It's hanging. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go out there, and the first people that I see are my daughter, and she's such a sweetheart, and she's very, very emotionally charged. And her and my neighbor, who's a sweet woman, are like embraced in this hug, and they're both like teary-eyed. I'm like, oh no, this is going to be bad. And I go over there, and my son is laying flat on the ground, face down on the concrete, and he's got his foot kind of draped over his other one. And it looked loose for sure, but dangling, hanging is a bit of a stretch. I'm like, okay. So I walk up to him. I'm like, hey, tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what's going on. He's not teary-eyed. He's like, I think I broke it. I'm like, can you move it? He's like, no. But he wasn't wincing. He was still talking. I'm like, okay, he didn't break his leg or his foot. He just sprained it, I'm sure. And so the next thing I hear is my daughter say, I just called mom. She's meeting you at the hospital.
Oh boy.
I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, Viv, like, don't. And so I get Eli loaded up in the truck, and we drive to the Instacare because that's more appropriate.
Yeah.
And I get to the Instacare, and my daughter said, Mom says the Instacare is not open on Sunday. I'm like, can you just not for a minute and just let me handle this? Like, let me deal with this. So I get to the Instacare, and it's open. And I said to my son, hey, stay here. I'm going to go just check to make sure. And then I get flagged down by my ex-wife, who's at the hospital that happens to be the entrance is, I don't know, 150 yards that way. And she's like, Ryan, bring him over here. I'm like, no, we're at the Instacare. She's like, no, they're just going to send him here anyways. Just bring him here. So I drive over to the emergency room, and I look over there, and she's there. And then they've got a nurse with a wheelchair. I'm like, he just sprained his ankle. So I get out, I park, I go around, I open the door, he steps out, and his mom looks at it, and she's like, it's not exactly hanging.
That's funny.
Like, I know. So we went in there, and sure enough, he has a sprained ankle. But that was our day yesterday. That consumed a lot of our time and energy.
That is really funny, actually.
Oh
really
my gosh.
funny.
Just people need to calm down and just like, I got it. It's fine. We can take care of it, but everybody wants to be involved. And yeah, I mean, I knew what had happened. As soon as I walked out and saw it, I'm like, oh, he sprained his ankle. It might hurt, but it's fine. So that's where we're at.
That's funny. I've been on both sides of that issue where kids like broken leg, it's fine. It was only a sprain, not a big deal. I've also been in this scenario where my daughter's like, her arm, and I'm like, you're fine. And then
it's fine.
2 days later, it still hurts. And I'm like, we take an inch broken. I was like, okay.
I think you told me that.
I'm like, my bad. So.
But it also depends on your child, because every human has a different tolerance to pain.
Totally.
So if the tough one is telling you it hurts, okay, there might be something to it. If the weak one is, not too concerned about it.
Oh, it's funny.
But that's it. Sir. So, should we get into some questions today? It seems like we've got a theme today. It's kind of weird, but it is what it is. So let's get after it.
It's weird and maybe a little sad, actually. I was reading these questions and I was like, man, this sucks.
It is.
But
sad,
let's hop into these. So we're going to field questions from the Iron Council. That's our exclusive brotherhood. Closed for enrollment, but will open for enrollment June 15th for Q3. Right. Chris Henningson, what were some things that you did right after being told you were getting a divorce? I just got a text from my wife last night after 3 months of no contact, and she is filing this week.
Yeah, and this is the theme, is there's a lot of divorce questions today. So it's unfortunate that men are going through this. I've gone through this, Kipp, you have as well, and millions of other people who listen have gone through this also. I think the first thing that it was a bit of a blur, and I'm sure it is for you too, that I don't know that I could pinpoint and tell you exactly what I did or had some systematic process, because it was so emotionally heavy at that point, that I think the best thing you can do is just to take a breath, to not self-destruct, to find hobbies that you're interested in and almost in a way force yourself to do it, to eat properly, to go to the gym, and also to get yourself around other people. Now, you may not feel like you want to be around other people. I can certainly relate with that.
Yeah.
But you can't isolate, because when you isolate, you start thinking and pondering and brainstorming, and it just becomes so overwhelming just to be constantly with your thoughts as you're dealing with something difficult like that. And then isolation leads to temptation. And so we start making bad choices if we're isolated that way. So what I would suggest is what I just did. Take your breath. Maybe you want to document some of the ways you're feeling. Sometimes that's helpful to be able to write it out. Maybe call a few friends. I remember, Kipp, I called you when I was hit with that news several years ago. And a couple other people. Jay Jardulo is another one I called, and a few others. But yeah, just get on the phone, make some calls. In the Iron Council, get on the horn with your battle team and your battle brothers, and just talk about the issues. Because sometimes, and if you have a therapist, make a call right now to go talk with them. Not to save the marriage or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that at this point, but just so you can talk to that individual and start working through some of the emotional baggage and weight that you're inevitably going to deal with for a little while moving forward.
Yeah. Chris, you're going to be tempted to be highly reactionary. I'm going to do this, and this will, and it'll be rooted in trying to manipulate her, change the outcome, prove a point, and or she's going to do things, and then you're going to want to react, and vice versa. I would get really clear on what's within your realm of control and what's outside your realm of control. And that realm of control, what kind of man are you going to show up as despite the circumstance? What's the right thing to do? How do you show up? How do you communicate? And you stick to that. Don't get sucked in to her emotional reactions to things and trying to prove a point or argue, or just let it go. And really get centered on how you how you need to show up in spite of how she might react or what emotions may occur.
Right. In his situation, I think it's a little different because
they haven't been in contact for 3 months.
3 months, they haven't even been in contact. So there might be some of that grieving process that's taken place, and not to the fullest extent by any means, but it also might be that she's going to be less emotionally reactive, just like you might be less emotionally reactive too, which is a good thing in the grand scheme of things. So, yeah.
Good point. Dalton Harward, do you have any tips for reconnecting with your spouse when you don't share many common interests? I'm aware that couples need diversity, but it seems like things we enjoy are quite far apart. She winds down on Xbox and likes staying up late and sleeping in. I prefer physical activity, and I have a fairly regiment evening and morning routine. I don't intend to dog on how she spends her time. I'm just looking for some tips on what I can do or should give some slack on to meet her in the middle.
Yeah, I think you just answered the question in two different ways. Number one, you have to have your own activities and hobbies, and it sounds like you both do. You know, she's playing video games, and which is kind of interesting. Like, that's not usually the case. It's usually the other way around, but that's kind of interesting.
I think the next generation behind us, the girls play video games a lot.
Really?
That's rare for us. Yeah. My sons that are like dating girls, their girlfriends play video games.
They play video games?
Yeah. Like we used to do. It's weird.
Whoa, that's weird.
Like,
that is
just
weird,
so everyone's listening, you young people, our generation, almost no girls ever played video games. It was only guys who would play. So it was very much of a guy thing. But I think it's changed quite a bit. But anyhow.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I actually don't really have a real big problem with video games unless it gets out of control or using it to escape from life. You know, then I see it obviously becoming an issue. Same as watching football. You know, I don't see any problem with having a team and watching football unless it consumes your entire weekend and your mood is dependent on who gets drafted to where and what team is winning or losing, and that's a problem. So anyways, it sounds like you both have your own thing, which is good. What I think I would do is I would talk to her and say exactly what you just said. Hey, hon, I want to find middle ground. I want to be involved in our lives. I'm glad that you have things that you like. I have things that I like. And believe it or not, I actually want to keep some of these things for just me. But I also want to connect with you. What do you? How can we do that? And you know what? Maybe it's playing video games with her for an hour every Wednesday night or something. And in exchange, she's like, "Cool, that's awesome." Like, he's making an effort, and you tell her, "Hey, I would like to go on a walk in the evening on Tuesday and Thursday evening." And I think if you guys are both respectable to each other and respectful, it sounds like you are because you're bringing this conversation up, that both of you wouldn't have any problem engaging in something the other person is engaged in. And it doesn't seem like it would take very much effort at all to do that. And I think what you might find is that a willingness to go to her might open up a desire for her to come to you because she knows, I care. Like, he cares about what I'm doing. I matter to him. And that's a really valuable thing.
Yeah. Ryan, would you give Dalton any advice on, when I first read the beginning of his question, right? Any tips for reconnecting? I immediately went to something deeper than sharing hobbies.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, like, part of me, Dalton, wants to say, just make sure that there's nothing else there. I don't want to suggest and open up a can of worms for you, but why do you feel there's a disconnect? What is it? Is it just hobbies, or is there other things that should be addressed, or conversations need to be had around other things? And you're assuming that the hobby or spending time together is the solution, when in reality, it might be a conversation around the thing where there might be an upset.
Right. And I think that's also dependent on how open and communicative you guys are currently. Because if you're not used to having deep conversations and you come in guns a-blazing with deep conversations, that's going to be, you're going to be met with resistance to that. Yeah. So if you're not used to having those conversations, I would suggest that you open that up lightly and gradually with patience and consistency over time. So it might be, hey, I know we don't seem to be as connected with what's going on throughout each other's day, but I would love to just maybe every day at the end of the day or after dinner, if we could just get together and just talk about each other's day. And you don't come in there with an agenda. You just open the channels and see if that starts to lead into deeper, more meaningful conversations. I think that's a really good point, Kipp, that you brought up, that it might be something deeper than we're just not doing stuff together. Yeah.
Justin Von Zahn, how do you work on yourself after a breakup /divorce, what pillars would you use to rebuild yourself?
So again, a divorce question. We've got like 5 of them today.
Yeah.
What pillars would I use? Mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Those are the pillars I would focus on. So physical, that's the easiest one, I think. It's the most transactional. It's the most tangible. Get rid of any junk food. If you're drinking or substance abuse, start shutting that down, because that's really going to start messing with you, especially with your emotions. And it's only going to make the problems worse. It's going to make you highly emotional. You're going to respond or react in every situation. You're going to be very upset. But you're going to be tempted to do that to sedate yourself as well. So I would do that. Number one is get the physical side locked in, and then just exercise. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's going to the gym. Maybe it's jujitsu. Maybe it's just going for a walk, just clearing your head and going for a walk every morning. Yeah. Emotional would be being in touch with the way you're feeling and being willing to sit in it. So it's going to be reading books about how to develop emotional intelligence. It's going to be journaling. Maybe it is a therapist. It might even just be talking with friends. I know when I talk with you and other people, Kipp, and there might not even be any solutions that necessarily come from some of those deeper conversations, but I always feel lighter when I get done with a conversation like that. And because I'm able to get some of the stuff off of my chest, and that helps. Intellectual, pick an area that you want to focus on. Maybe it's you want to improve your finances. And so buy a book or buy a course on finances. Maybe there's a certain designation or degree that would help you secure a promotion at work. Cool. Buy that course or buy that book or read that program or go to that conference or sign up for those emails. But just pick a lane in the intellectual realm and build something and make sure it's useful to you. And then the last one is the spiritual realm. So if you're a God-fearing man, then it would be making sure you're going to church. It would be praying and be cracking open the scriptures and really having conversations with him. If you're not a God-fearing man, then I would suggest that there's still a way to tap into the spiritual side of your purpose on this earth and what you're meant to do and what is your purpose moving forward and ways that we're connected with different people and connected with nature. Like, that's what I would do, and that's what I have done. Right. And it's the hardest part of it is that you don't want to do it. If you're anything like me, what you want to do is just sit there and wallow around in your own self-pity. And that's very tempting. And sure, do that to some degree, but make sure it's productive and force yourself, if you have to get involved in the things that I just told you, those pillars we discussed. Yeah.
Last Sunday, I had a lesson I taught, and it was rooted in this idea of how do we find happiness and peace in life. And Justin, I see a correlation, and I actually, he was on the Friday call and we kind of talked about this a little bit. He shared a little bit of his breakup, I believe, on the Friday call. But someone that's happy and at peace, they have a healthy relationship with their past. And so what does that look like? How do I have a healthy relationship with a breakup and a divorce? You have a healthy relationship by learning from it. That's how. You become a better version of yourself because of it. And as long as you learn and grow from it, then it almost resolves the unhealthiness of it or the upset around it, because now you're somewhat grateful that it occurred. It wasn't wasted, and you're a better version of yourself. The second element is you have hope for the future, that you know that tomorrow brings something good. And then the last is humility and gratitude for the present. And so I would focus in those 3 areas after an upset, a breakup, or a divorce is, what do I learn and grow from? What does the future hold for me? And part of that is hope for the future is I learned the mistake of the past, right? So I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I'm going to become a better version of myself. I'm going to get in shape physically. I'm going to grow mentally. I'm going to get my spiritual stuff. That gives you hope for what tomorrow brings. And then most importantly, there is plenty of things to be grateful for right now. and realize of the blessings that you have, the health that you do have, despite the fact that you just had a breakup. Find the silver lining and be grateful for what you have in the moment as well.
Yeah. I think that's good, man. That's well said. That's going to serve a lot of people because, again, a lot of the questions we're getting. And by the way, guys, we've got a course that's going to be coming out in June as well called Divorce, Not Death. And I've seen a lot of stuff out there, and most of it is centered around getting your ex back. That's most of what you'll see. How do I win her back? And I think there's a lot of really good information that you can learn about yourself if it's taught and executed well, and it's not so heavily focused on her. But this course and program that we're putting together is not focused on winning her back. It's focused on moving forward. It's focused on improving your life, improving who you are. How do you get over this? The financial ramifications. Now you have kids and co-parenting to deal with, and eventually you're probably going to start dating again. And how do you do that? And so it's really, it's closing the chapter closing the page to that chapter rather than trying to keep it open and, win her back through some strategy that some person online tells you to. So
yeah,
I think this will be really helpful.
DivorceNotDeath.com,
Correct.
middle of June, June 15th.
Middle of June.
Okay.
Yeah, middle of June. Yeah.
Excellent.
So that'll be a good one.
All right, we'll keep this train going here.
Okay.
Brad Letterman, I'm just starting the divorce process now, so any advice is welcomed.
I feel like I think we've hit that pretty well. I
Okay.
think we've given a lot of, don't you think? Is there anything else that you would add? We talked about the pillars. We talked about learning from it, hope for the future, humility and gratitude. We talked about,
I
making
thought you were
sure
gonna
that you
go-
don't react.
Yeah, I was going to go. I was thinking more process, right? So I expected you to dive into fight for your right, make sure that you get your time with your kids. Don't be passive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are good
logistical
points.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a lot of logistics to it. The first thing I would say is make sure that you're being as amicable as possible, but not doing it at the expense of your rights. So, for example, a lot of guys will leave the house. It's like, well, don't do that just yet. You want to talk with an attorney first before you start making those decisions that could ultimately impact time with the kids or financial arrangements and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Also, what a lot of people will do is they'll start pulling money from accounts and
moving even out of state.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful with relocations. Yeah.
Right. If I were you too, I would make sure that I'm documenting everything. I'm documenting spending, hyper aware of what's being spent right now, because I don't know if this is true in every state, and obviously I'm not an attorney, but from what I understand and gather is that if she starts spending money recklessly after there's some sort of, I can't remember the term, but some sort of, it's not proclamation, but some step in the legal process, she can't just go randomly just start spending all of your guys' money. And if she does, then you have a right to that money back.
Yeah.
And so I would definitely say hire an attorney. And that's one mistake that I made that I wish I would have hired an attorney. And I didn't because we were pretty amicable, but things have a way of changing. And there's things that you just aren't aware of in the divorce process. So I advocate for picking up an attorney. And you can still be amicable, by the way, if you both have attorneys. In fact, that would be ideal. But it's just a way to protect your rights, a person who understands all the legal ramifications of what you're dealing with and is going to advocate on your behalf so you get maximum opportunity with the kids, maximum financial provisions, et cetera, et cetera. And Dave Ramsey says this really well. I heard him once say, once a couple have decided to divorce, it is at that point a business arrangement moving forward. And you need to really, as best you can, strip away the emotional baggage and toil that comes from losing somebody you've probably been with for a relatively long period of time. And now it's a business arrangement. And so you need to start looking at it like that. But you can't do that by yourself because you do have so much baggage and connection and emotional connection to that person. But an attorney can definitely help you with that. So make sure you get that stuff taken care of.
Brad, and I don't know if you have kids or some of these guys that are asking these questions have kids or not, but don't lose sight on why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes we have a tendency to get our ego involved here, and it's about controls and not what's best for our children. And so don't lose sight of that if children are involved. And with that said, let me ask you that question. Ryan, how do you, from your perspective, don't let your ego jump into play and just, try to lash out or persecute the shit out of her, you know what I mean, for making this decision and all that. How do you keep your ego out of this from your perspective?
In my opinion, I mean, it is very, very easy. And that's one of the questions that somebody asked too. I think it's a few questions down. But in my opinion, the ego is just going to get you in trouble. And you need to start looking at this practically. So yeah, you can exact revenge on her for whatever perceived grievance that you have. And maybe it's legitimate. And there are things that you should.
And she might absolutely be doing that to you. Right.
She might actually be doing that on purpose just to agitate you even.
Yeah.
Or to get a rise out of you or to get you to do something stupid. That's why you have to be careful. I think I've seen things that people have written down in texts. And it's like, why would you put that in a text? Why would you say that in the first place, let alone actually have it in a text? Yeah. You know she's saving that, as you should be saving your text threads. Like, of course. But what I would say is your ego going to help you have more time with the kids? Is it going to help the kids develop better? Is it going to help you be in a better financial situation? Or are you shooting yourself in the foot because you're pissed? And you might have a reason to be pissed. That's the hard part, is some of that grievance that you have is legitimate. Of course it is. And yet still, as a grown man, you have to make a decision to say, okay, I can fight for my rights and I can hire counsel and I can do what I need to do. And I can still be amicable and not let every little obnoxious annoyance or prod or poke from her be the thing that sets you off and ruins the relationship you have with the kids, ruins them and their own personal development, the children's personal development, and then messes with your chances for maximum financial provision and maximum custody time.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, Mike Arndolfer, tips and suggestions on how to apologize to your kids when you're wrong.
I saw this question. I think it's actually pretty easy. I don't know why we tend to make this so hard. This might be an ego thing. Like, I'm the dad, I'm supposed to always know what. But you could say that. You could tell your child that. Hey, look, I have a really hard time apologizing to you when I do something that warrants an apology, because as your father, I feel like I always have to be in the position to know what to do and know what's right. But
I make mistakes.
I am also a human being, just like you are, and I make mistakes. And it's important that when we make mistakes, we own them and say sorry where we can. And so I want to say sorry for yelling at you last night. I was frustrated with work. That's not an excuse to take it out on you. And whatever we were talking about, I wasn't actually mad at you. I was lashing out at you, and you did not deserve that, and I'm sorry. I think it's as straightforward as that. I don't really need to think that you need to over-explain or grovel or go buy your kid anything, or that's manipulation. You're trying to win them back over. Just own it. Tell them why it's important. Teach them the lesson so they can learn it too, and change your behavior.
Yeah. And one tip, Mike, to get, present to why you should, because your kid needs to see this modeled.
Yeah,
if you're never apologizing when you're in the wrong, they know you're in the wrong, by the way, and you don't apologize, what are you teaching them? So that's the price. That's the price of this. Yeah, this is the price of this. They need to see this. It's for their benefit. So don't rob them of this, and model the behavior that you want them to learn. And that is, when you make mistakes, you own it and you apologize and you clean it up. And not only that, you're not perfect. What a great lesson for your kids to finally learn. I mean, we talked about this months ago, Ryan, around the time as boys when you realize your dad is just a normal guy. It was a good thing, right? Don't rob that from your children. So I would prioritize this big time, and don't wait. That's been my thing. Just don't wait. The minute I know I'm in the wrong, I immediately I don't know why it comes to mind. I'm like, Kola, come here really quick. Eye level. Hey, buddy, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled at you. I shouldn't be being mean. I'm sorry about that. And then move on.
I think it's important. Yeah. And I think it's important to do it quickly too, because the longer you wait, they may not be able to connect your apology to what happened either. And it's like when you're training, it's a bad analogy because I'm not likening my kids to a dog. But if you punish a dog for pooping in the house, but you do it a week later, it just thinks you're being a dick. Like it doesn't connect the punishment with pooping in the house because it's been so long. And so I think it's really important that you do it quickly, not to mention the emotional relief that comes from just squaring up with a person who you've slighted in some way. But yeah, I agree. Do that fast, do it quick. And then also make sure that you change your behavior, because what you run the risk of doing is having empty apologies. So if you lose your patience constantly, and every week or every couple of days you're having to say sorry to one of your kids for losing your patience, they're just going to say, okay, Dad, whatever, cool. Because they know in 2 days you're going to do it again.
Yeah.
And then that undermines the trust that you have with them. But also there's another thing here too, that if you're losing your patience with your kids every 2 days, what's going on?
Yeah.
Are you stressed? Are you angry? Do you have resentment? Like, what is actually at the root of what you're doing over and over and over again? And I'd say there's some work that needs to be addressed if you're having to apologize all the time for the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, good call. All right, Jeremy Kofi, what's one major disappointment you faced that in hindsight turned out to be a blessing?
I saw this question. I've had so many things that it would be hard for me to take one, and say, oh, it's this one. I remember this one thing happened and I was devastated.
My life's full of disappointments that I've benefited from.
How's the saying go? I've had more disappointments than most people have, or forgotten more disappointments than most people have ever had, or something like that. But that's not true. Like, all of us have disappointments in life. And I don't know, my faith has been tested over the past couple of years, but I still have enough to say, you know what, like, there is a plan for this, whether it's losing a relationship or a job or getting hurt or doing something dumb or dealing with a bankruptcy and making a bad financial decision. There's lessons in all of it, and you talked about that. I do remember one in particular when I was fairly early on in my marriage, within the first several months, I was in retail. I managed Buckle clothing stores, of all places, believe it or not. And most people would probably laugh if they knew that, but that's what I did. And I was offered a store in Southern California. So we were going to move from Northern Utah to Southern California. And I was so excited about it. Just completely passionate about it, excited about it. I finally get my own store. It's in Southern California, this big, beautiful, brand new mall, Victoria Gardens Mall in Rancho Cucamonga. Like, it was awesome. It was such a cool experience. Newly married at the time. And we get down there, and if I remember correctly, it was about 3 months, maybe 4 months into our trip, my work down there. And I get a call from my sergeant in the National Guard. And he says, hey, Ryan, our unit's been activated. We're going to Iraq. And it wrecked my plan. Like, I was going to move through the corporate ladder. I was going to run that store. I was going to become a district manager. Like, I was so excited about it. I loved the work. There's still a lot that I miss about that work. We ended up going to Iraq in 2005 and 2006. And about halfway through that deployment, I realized, you know what? I don't know if I actually want to do that when I get back. I don't think I want to work nights and weekends. And I don't think I want to travel from store to store and help them fix stores. And the corporate offices were in Kearney, Nebraska. Nobody's ever heard it. And if I wanted to be in corporate, that's where I would have to be unless they had stay-at-home options. And I realized I don't want to do the holidays, and I'm ready for something new. And so, long story short, I ended up taking I came back from a leave, met with a financial advisor, and he had said that he's looking for a few advisors. And I took all of my insurance and investment materials back to Iraq with me for the last half of my deployment, and ended up studying those because I didn't have a plan when I got back. And I remember calling my district manager, and she said, "Hey, we're so excited to have you back in a couple months." And I told her, I said, I'm not coming back. She's like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I'm not coming back. I don't want to do that." And she was disappointed, and I was disappointed, but it was the right decision. And the decision to do the financial planning stuff springboarded into a very lucrative and successful financial planning practice, which, again, long story short, springboarded what we're doing here with Order of Man. If I was never deployed, I would probably still be in retail in some capacity, probably at the corporate level, and I would have been fine at that. But the trajectory that I was on, that I didn't know I was on, is pretty incredible when you think about it and you look back over that time frame.
Yeah, that's wild. Dude, I could think of so many things like this. They're everywhere. And I think that's at the root of this question, right? Is that disappointment, it can serve us. And there's blessings in so much disappointment that we experience in life. I mean, I wouldn't have never started my own company if I didn't get laid off by Intel back in 2008.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, and trust me, I was like stressed out about that. I'm like absolutely bad. Like, if I had to give it a grade, I'm like, this is not good. Well, guess what? It ended up being the best thing ever, right? I mean, there was a time when we were trying to move back from New York, and we were looking at houses here in Utah. And Ryan, you've been to the house. That particular house, we looked at it, we saw it, and we got outbid and we lost that house. I'm not sure if you know this or not. We lost that house. And shortly right after that, I had a bunch of clients that like defaulted on payments and stuff. And in hindsight, we wouldn't have got the house anyway. There's no way we would have gotten the house. Yeah. I didn't have the down payment that I was forecasting based upon business cash flow. So I'm like, so it's good that we got outbid. Here's the funny part. 6 months later, I called the realtor. I'm like, "Hey, whatever happened to that house?" And he's like, "Let me check on it." Calls me back in an hour and says, "It's back on the market."
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, "Bid now. Like, we'll take it." And that moment, we were prepared to get that house. Right. So, and I can go on and on around scenarios where I thought the sky was falling and everything's horrible, and it ended up just being just fine, if not better than what I assumed.
I think a lot of it too just has to do with your attitude about it. You were talking about hope earlier, and if you have a hopeful attitude, then things have a way of working themselves out. And maybe it is God's plan ultimately, or maybe it's just that you're just an optimistic person and you're willing to make the best of every situation. And so, of course, more opportunities present themselves to you. I kind of joke around a little bit with church. A lot of times I'll hear people say, "Well, we just moved here and we really prayed and God told us that we needed to live here, or God told me I need to do this for work." And in my arrogance, I used to say, God doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care where you live. He doesn't care where you work or what you do. He just wants you to be a good and righteous person and follow him.
Yeah.
And you can do that in St. George or in Maine or in Italy or wherever. And you're going to find good people there and bad people there. It's no surprise to me that the most optimistic people are always the ones who are the most successful in life. And, you might be tempted to say, well, the reason they're optimistic is because they're successful. I don't think so. I think they're optimistic and it's breeds success, however you want to measure that and define that. I'm not so arrogant to say that God doesn't care. I believe he does. But I think he's also going to give you what you need to make the most of wherever you are.
Yeah.
And everybody always thinks that the next thing is better. The next job is better. The next relationship is better. The next hobby is better. The next this, the next workout, the next that is always better. It is better if you decide to make it better. Like you were saying earlier about learning from your mistakes. If your financial situation will be better if you learn what you need to learn. Your next relationship will be better if you learn what you need to learn. But for me, I lie somewhere in the middle between God doesn't care and he cares about everything, but he's already given you what you need to make the most of any situation you might find yourself in.
Totally. You know, I use this during training around leadership, around talking about the power of difficulty and stress. And there's actual change in the brain when stress is involved that allows the learning to cement and be more concrete. That is a fact. And I always use the analogy of jiu-jitsu. Stress on the mat, training, you know, I'd say level 5. Tournament stress, level 10. Almost every single tournament, I remember like they were yesterday, right? I remember the mistakes I made. I remember what I was thinking. It's concrete in my mind. Why? Stress was super high. Learning opportunity was optimal. Here's the key though. What is it that I'm learning? So when stress is super high and I'm learning, woe is me, nothing for me to learn, everyone always does this to me, I can't ever trust anybody, guess what you're learning? You're learning that.
Yeah,
and that's going to be concrete in your mindset. But if during stress you choose to be optimistic, you choose to see the silver lining, you choose to look at a growth opportunity, guess what you're going to learn? Perseverance, hope, growth, all these other things will be cemented in your mind. So the way you look at stress absolutely dictates future circumstances and how you deal with them.
I like the way you said that, the way you look at stress, because there are stressful situations. All of us have them. Just how are you going to look at it? And the beautiful thing is you get to choose. Yeah. You could be devastated today for some reason, whatever reason, and you could choose. You could still be devastated, but you can choose like, hey, yeah, I feel that way, but also I'm going to choose to be optimistic, or I'm going to choose to be happy, or I'm going to choose to be productive today. You know, a lot of these guys who are talking about going through divorces, it's a decision that you have to make every moment. Not every day. For you and what you're going through right now, it's every moment. When you're driving down the road to work and you hear a song that reminds you of her and you're tempted to break down and cry, sure, if it's appropriate, do what you got to do. But then buck up and say, you know what? I'm still going to kick ass at work today because that is what I'm deciding to do. Or, you know, maybe you've been divorced for a year and you think, man, I'm interested in getting back into the dating pool. Okay. Then choose to be optimistic that there's good women out there. You just have to be a good man and find who it is. And that your past experience with women does not mean that all women might be that certain way that was bothering you, right? Man, it's just make a choice in spite of how you feel. Make a choice. And there's, speaking of the brain chemistry, so there's the amygdala, which is responsible for processing emotion. We talked a little bit about this in Iron Council on Friday. And that is what is referred to generally as the lizard brain. It's the oldest, most mature portion of the brain, but it's designed to process emotion. And then you have this more advanced version, newer version called the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is designed around logical and rational decision-making. So your brain is literally fighting making rational decisions
against
when
itself.
Cortisol levels, against itself. It's like the devil and the angel sitting on the shoulder. Like the devil's like, you should feel bad, you're a horrible piece of shit. And the angel's like, whoa. You're probably not. You probably did some things wrong. Here's what they are, and learn them, and then like, let's be better now. And that's what's happening in our brains. And it's something to be aware of because it's something we have to contend with every day. Yeah. Every single day.
Absolutely.
Just make a decision.
Brent Wardall, he has a great question here. He says, if your son or future son grew up to model your life exactly as it is now, what would you be proud of and what would you fear?
I would be proud of, I'd be proud of him if he followed his dreams and his interests, and he was willing to take some risks.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what I've done. I feel like I've taken risks, and I feel like I've done a good job there. What I would not be proud of, not that I wouldn't be proud of, but that I wouldn't wish on him, is I don't even really know how to explain it. I would hope that he would take care of himself a little better than I do, for me.
Physically, mentally, spiritually.
Yeah, just all of it. Those realms I talked about. You know, I'm hard on myself. I'm not forgiving. Yeah. I hold on to things for a long time. I don't hold grudges. I can move past things pretty well, but I have some insecurities that are hard to deal with at times. And I'm sure all of us feel that way, but sometimes it's abusive.
Yeah.
And I would not want that for him. So I'm trying to work on what I can do now so that I can model hopefully what my children will follow. But those are hard things for me. They're really hard.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think for me, it's, I think I've done a good job rising above my circumstance. I joked around that my intro to that keynote last week was kind of poking fun of my upbringing, to be honest with you. And I think I've done good, right? Like I think in the grand scheme of things, being raised the way I was raised, I've done well for myself. I mean, and I don't use this as a badge, but I was like the third out of 9 to graduate high school, the only one to go to college, right? Like in the grand scheme of things, on paper, my family's not successful, right? If you want to use that term. Now, with that all said, the thing that I wouldn't want my son to attach that I've attached is being happy with myself, which is ironic, right? Because how much of the quest of all those things was a superficial quest of seeking validation and happiness, when reality that's available to all of us right now.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot of years to realize that. I always felt that if I achieved, if I made more money, if I had the accolades of man, if I sought approval of others, that meant that I could have to be fulfilled and at peace and happy with myself. And unfortunately, I used it to my benefit. It has served me to some extent. I won at that game. But I wouldn't say that I've been happy with myself for the last 20 years. It took a long time for me to realize that it was never going to be found in any of that. And so I'd want my boys just to be happy, to enjoy life, to be grateful for what they have, and don't seek after all that superficial bullshit that I spent too much time focusing on.
Yeah. There's I've been reading this book called Let Them by Mel Robbins. I've told you a little bit about it. It's really good. I'm listening to it, actually, not reading it, but I've really enjoyed it. It's definitely lowered my blood pressure when we allow others to live how they're going to live and know that it's beyond our control.
Yeah.
But she has said this phrase a couple of times. And I think the phrase, I might get the words wrong, but it's something along the lines of, you get one wild and precious life. And it's wild. Like, it's crazy, and you can make whatever you want, and it's highs and lows and ups and downs. And it is precious, because once it's gone, it's gone. We're done. And whatever happens today is over. That's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah.
I saw this map, and it's this printout, and it's dots for every day of your life if you lived average life expectancy, and you fill in each day.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
we're almost more than halfway.
Yeah.
When you look at it. Yeah. I've seen that same thing. I'm like, ugh. I don't know if I'd want that on my wall.
No, I wouldn't either. I guess that's the Stoic memento mori concept. But, or I've had friends who describe raising their kids as 18 summers.
Yeah.
Like you get 18 summers with them. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
And then it's done. Mm-hmm. So I think there is something to be said for just realizing, like, what would you do today if you knew you were going to die tomorrow?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you'd be willing to do a lot more. And I'm not saying that you should just be reckless because you might die at some point, but you probably should take a few more risks than you currently are. So should I. Or we probably ought to get over things faster or let go of resentment or grudges. Yes, exactly. Take some risks. Try a new thing. When a friend calls you and says, hey, do you want to do this? Yeah, heck yeah, I want to do that. I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to do that again. And if you have the means and opportunity, by all means, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
That wild and precious life is something that resonated with me.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and to your point, the summers, right? I use that. Luckily, I read something like that a few years back. It's probably the same source where you read it. I don't even know where I got that from, but
it's probably Jim Shields, I think is his name.
That talks about summers that you have with people.
Yeah, keep going. I'll pull it up while you're talking.
Anyhow, I mean, luckily I was exposed to that concept a few years before my dad died. And I remember going home, having that conversation with my wife saying, I got 3 summers and not any summers. How often do I visit? Once a summer? Okay. I got 3 visits.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 visits, period. That's it. That's all I got with them. And luckily we made a little bit of a pivot and an adjustment to how often I was seeing my parents at the time. And I'm grateful we did because we had that mindset, of limited time.
Yeah.
All right. One more question.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
one more. The one that I was going to talk to you about or the resource. It's called The Family Board Meeting by Jim Shields. And the subtitle is, you have 18 summers to create lasting connection with your children. So it's a good book, The Family Board Meeting. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
All right. Chris, we're going to hop over to Facebook. Christopher Kroom. He has 2 questions, solid questions. So maybe we do a 1-2 punch here. Number 1, hierarchical decision-making. Do you use any consistent, repeatable matrix or prioritization frameworks to game plan your short and long-term goals? Let's stop there really quick. And then I'll go to question number 2.
I don't, because that's not my mentality. I'm a very intuitive thinker and processor. I process fast and I process with a lot of intuition. I'm not saying that my way is better than somebody who processes through data, for example, or emotion. I would think if it's just emotion, that would probably be inferior, but because I think your heart can play a lot of tricks on you. But I tend to be more intuitive. And so if I write out my vision, which I have, and I have my objectives for the quarter, which I do, and then I have my tactics for the day, which are set, and then I have my to-do list, the things that come up, I can look at my to-do list. In fact, I did this morning. I had to book some flights. That took priority. Is it the most pressing thing I'll do all day? No. This probably is, or another podcast that I might have. But that had to be done right then and there. And I'm intuitive enough to know, okay, that's what's required because I have all of it in front of me.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say I have a system for putting all the facts and information in front of me, and then I can scan it, look at it, process it as quickly as I do, and make a decision. We have these mindsets, and there's some of them are so ingrained into our subconscious that we don't even realize that we're doing it. And one of my ingrained mindsets is don't waste time. And so I could sit here for an hour or a week or a year thinking about something, or I could just do it.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard of people who are like, I wanted to start a business for 5 years. I remember this guy one time. I was putting up a new fence at my house. And the guy came over and he was dropping the supplies off for the fence from the local hardware store. And we got talking for a minute and he's like, oh, so what do you do for work? And I told him what I did. And he told me, oh, you know what? I've always wanted to. And I can't remember what he said. He's like, 10 years ago, I wanted to do this thing. And I said, why didn't you do it? He's like, I don't know. I just time. And like, I was young. I didn't have any money and I just didn't know what to do or how to do it. I'm like, well, that's fair. That makes sense. Why don't you do it right now? And he said the same thing. I don't know. It was time and like money and I don't know what to do or how to do it. And I said, well, can I be really frank with you about it? He's like, yeah. I said, I'll see you in 10 years when I have to rebuild this fence and we're going to have the same conversation we're having right now. How do you feel about that? He's like, shit, I never looked at it like that. He said, look, I'm not trying to like dismiss what you're doing for work or your life, but you don't seem real content. And what are you going to do? Just wait around, hope that something changes? So the time wasting thing, I'm not willing to sit on things and waste a bunch of time. It's just not a thing I'm willing to do.
I love that. All right. Christopher's last question, which was the one I really wanted to get to because I don't know why I love this. Optics versus execution. We live in a world where, especially in corporate settings, optics means as much, if not more, than someone's character or ability to execute. I've made a clear stance in my profession. I don't care about optics. However, it seems necessary evil to bring attention to otherwise solid work. Seems like the squeaky wheel gets the grease even when another quieter wheel needs it more because leaders only look outward evidence and never inspection for the actual work.
I'm going to chastise a little bit. You have a real bad attitude, Chris, about optics. Optics are crucial.
Critical.
I mean, think about, okay, and I can say that because we know each other and like I'm playing, but also like, hey, like let's change the attitude on this one. And here's why. Every day when you get out of bed, you put on a shirt. And you have that shirt for a reason. Maybe you think it looks good. Maybe it portrays what you want it to portray. Maybe it makes you feel a certain way and it motivates you because you look nice in that shirt. Yeah. And you do your hair a certain way. And you know what else I know you do is you have that beautiful backdrop when we're on our Zoom meetings on Friday and you pick that for a reason. Those are optics. And when I get behind this microphone, Kipp, you and I have these microphones for a reason because it projects sound well and it gets a good audio quality and I have the lighting and the camera because optics matter. And the way that we present ourselves matters. So what if instead of saying optics is at odds with execution, optics is an element of execution? I would rather take a guy who's 80% execution and maybe 20% optics than just 100% execution, but's a slob, can't talk to people, doesn't care, can't communicate because he's not worried about what other people think. And I think there is a place for what other people think. I care about what you guys think. How arrogant would it be if I didn't? I care about what my kids think. I care about what my friends think. Now, I don't care about what everybody thinks, but there are a few people that I really, really deeply respect and people that I take their thoughts about me into consideration. And so what do I want to put forward? I want to put forward good work. I want to communicate consistency. I want people to trust when I say something that it's going to get done. And everything I do, I try to convey that through the optics that are there. It doesn't make me disingenuous. I think that's the fear that, Chris, you might be having, is that it's making you disingenuous. It's not. You're just putting your best foot forward to give yourself the best opportunity. And optics doesn't mean you're being the squeaky wheel. I don't think that at all. But can you be assertive with your boss? Can you be assertive with your clients so that the optics are there without all the baggage and the bull crap of the squeaky wheel? I think you probably could. Operating in a little bit of a false dichotomy here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we're talking about influence. And
right.
And you alluded to this. That's what it means to be human. Day in and day out, I believe this. Day in and day out, most people spend their entire day focused on doing things to look good and the avoidance of things of looking bad.
Right.
It is at the center of what it means to be human. And to say that you don't do it, I think we're lacking maybe some self-awareness. You are doing it. We mostly all do it. And it's not bad. It's not good. It just is. And if you want to influence people, if I don't know your day to day, if I'm not involved in all that you do, guess all that I have to judge on is what? Optics.
What you know, right? Exactly.
And that's what humans do. We do it all the time, right? We watch certain YouTube videos because they talked a certain way and how it was delivered looked better, looked more professional. We're attracted to other people because we make a quick judgment that, they must care about their body more, or they must be more professional at what they do. It's what it means to be human. Now, should you be aware of that as well and realize that you may be quickly judging people based upon optics and it may not be the full truth? Absolutely. Be aware of the condition and what we do as humans, but also realize it's kind of what it means to be a human, period.
Yeah.
And then navigate within that. I mean, I confronted, but full disclosure, Christopher, I confronted this at one point. I remember years ago, it's kind of a funny story. I'll share it really quickly. Is I had a partner meeting, possible deal with another firm. It was kind of an important lunch. Okay. And we had two cars. We had, if I remember correctly, we had a Land Rover and we had a Mazda 6 that had a loose muffler and it was really embarrassing to drive. Those are the two cars we had. And I woke up in the morning and no. We had my BMW and the Mazda. That's what it was. We had my BMW and the Mazda. And we woke up in the morning and something came up and Aisha's like, hey, I got to take the BMW. And I'm like, whoa. You can't take the BMW. She's like, why? And I'm like, I have this meeting. I'm not driving the Mazda. Right? And she was like, who cares? And I'm like, it matters. If I go have a meeting with someone and we're talking about I'm successful, you're successful, you've achieved it in life, you're doing well, and you pull up in a Mazda, you don't think I'm judging that guy? Absolutely.
Of course.
I'm judging them.
Of course.
Now, should we not? No. Don't get into right and wrong. Just focus on realize that that's what we do and understand the optics.
Well, I think there's one other element that we overlooked here too is, aren't optics a respect to the other party?
Yeah.
Like when I show up ready to have this conversation, audio quality is good, video quality is good,
Yeah.
we have topics. That's respect. I'm paying respect to the people who I want to have listen to it. Or if in one aspect, if you go to church, like I think Christopher is a church going man. Like you go to church, I'm not saying you have to wear your Sunday best, but you might, maybe you wear a suit and a tie. At least you've got slacks and a collared shirt on, I imagine, because you want to pay respect to the gravity of the situation, your God. Or when you go to your daughter's dance recital, like hopefully you don't show up like a slob. There is that picture of that. I think he was a coal miner and he showed up to his son's basketball game or something and he's dirty from head to toe. That's a different story. He's paying respect by busting his butt to be there. And that's a different story. But if you go to your daughter's dance recital and you have the means and the time, wouldn't you put on either a pair of slacks or a suit or a nice pair of jeans with a button-up shirt and maybe groom your beard, get a haircut, show up with flowers so you can give them to her out. It's respectful to her. Yeah. You're honoring other people when you think about that. At least that's how I do it.
I agree. And we do this with our spouses, right? Like, look good for them.
Yeah.
It's a form of honoring them, right? And the relationship that we can have with them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, man. So I think the big call to action, dude. Yeah. Talk about like a divorce session.
I know, man. Rough.
DivorceNotDeath.com, middle of June 15th. Go to orderman.com, get connected, learn more, stay connected with Mr. Michler to learn more about that as well. At Ryan Michler on both X and Instagram. Once again, divorcenotdeath.com.
Perfect. I love it. Guys, good questions. I feel for those of you who are going through divorces and separations right now, I know how difficult that can be, but my main message on that is even in the wake of it, be hopeful.
Yeah.
And I think the more hopeful you are, the more right decisions you'll make, which will get you through it more effectively. So if nothing else, choose to be hopeful because you'll make better decisions. That's it. All right, guys, we'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.